What is America and who are Americans?
The United States of America, yeah.
Right.
Say U.S. citizens.
América como tal es el continente y los americanos somos todos y cada uno de los que estamos dentro del continente, que los habitamos.
Howdy y'all, what's up? Estoy en la Ciudad de Mexico, and I am also in Houston. And we are investigating what people think is America and who are Americans, and what does it all have to do with the movie Arrival. And we've got a new name for our channel. We used to be Professor Woody and Mr. Ford, but we wanted to be something that describes more than just us. So now we are called the Descriptivist Dialect. So the first thing we're going to do is ask people, what is America and who are Americans? This might seem obvious to many of you watching, but we think you might be surprised by the different answers that some people might give. So let's see what they have to say. ¿Qué es América y quiénes son americanos?
América considero que es todo el continente, o sea, desde Alaska, podría ser, Canadá, Groenlandia, hasta Sudamérica, que es Argentina, Chile.
Sí, bueno, muchas gracias.
Sí.
Y los americanos son toda la gente.
Todos, para mí son
Sí.
todos.
I'd say freedom. I mean, it's my home. It's where I've grown up. It's just, like he said, home. It's like where I'm used to living.
Yeah, that spirit.
Yeah, you had the American
patriotism.
spirit, the patriotism of it.
A quick note, being in the US and asking Americans who is American seems like we're asking for more than just the answer of something like a US citizen. Now, we're not trying to manipulate the answers here. We just want to make sure people answer the correct question, right? We're not looking for anything philosophical, so we just had to make sure we give them the context. When we say, I am an American and I am from America, what does the word America refer to? And then we ask the questions with that context in mind. If I say something like, I'm an American from America, what does America mean? What is the word America referring to? What, just the country like the USA?
Yeah, I'd say so.
And Americans are US citizens, or is it something else? Just like in the most basic sense.
I'd say so. Yeah, I'd say U.S. citizens.
Just the country itself, I would say.
Yeah.
I would agree.
Yeah, so like if I say I'm American, what country is that?
The United States of America.
Bueno, pues América como tal es el continente y los americanos somos todos y cada uno de los que estamos dentro del continente, que los habitamos.
Que América está constituido por América del Norte y América del Sur. Pues en realidad los americanos somos lo que constituimos pues en parte de toda la región de América.
From the United States of America, yeah.
Right.
América es todo un continente, desde el Polo Norte hasta la Patagonia, que es Argentina, donde termina.
So we can see that native English speakers from the USA said that America means the USA and Americans are people from the USA, as you might have expected. After all, in English, that is the way that we normally use those words. It's just a shortened form of the name United States of America. But when I talked to Mexicans, they said that Americans are all the people from every country in this continent, and that one continent being called America, from Alaska and the land of ice all the way down to Argentina and the land of fire. But whatever you think, whether America refers to a single continent or specifically to the USA, you are correct. Both sides of this argument are correct. But why? And why does this argument even exist in the first place? Why do people have different ideas for what the word America means? So let's take a look at the history of the name America and where it comes from. There are multiple theories, but the one most widely accepted by historical linguists is that it is a Latinized and feminized form of the name Amerigo, the first name of Amerigo Vespucci, an Italian explorer who made his voyages to America shortly after Columbus. The first use of the word America is in a world map from 1507 by German cartographer Martin Waldseemüller. Some of you may have already heard that Waldseemüller named the New World after Vespucci instead of Columbus because Vespucci was the first to actually recognize that it was a new land and not Asia. However, that is not true. Columbus recognized that America was a different continent by his third voyage in 1498, and Vespucci didn't even have his first voyage to America until 1499. In fact, on Columbus's third voyage, he even wrote, "I believe this is a very large continent which until now has remained unknown." On Vespucci's first voyage, he was still under the impression that he was also in Asia, and you can see this evidence in the fact that he used Asian names to name certain geographical features, like the Gulf of Ganges, for a body of water. It wasn't until his second voyage that he actually realized he was not in Asia in 1502. So why did the cartographer Waldseemüller name the land after Vespucci instead of Columbus? Well, news traveled slowly at the time, and Vespucci probably just had a better marketing team, leading Waldseemüller and his collaborator Matthias Ringmann to think that Vespucci actually had gotten there first. In fact, in a book accompanying the 1507 map, it says, thought to be written by Ringmann, "I do not see what right anyone would have to object to calling this part after Americus who discovered it." And in fact, even for 200 years after that, Spain objected to the name, saying that Columbus deserved the credit and the claim instead. And Waldseemüller's maps after the death of his collaborator Ringmann stopped using the word America. But the name had spread and other cartographers used it and it stuck. Which brings us to another question. Why do English speakers mostly use the word America to refer specifically to the USA? To get to the bottom of this, we have to look at another term, continents.
¿Cuántos continentes hay?
Son 5 continentes:
Cinco.
América, Oceanía, África, Europa y Asia.
Seven.
Something like
Asia,
that.
Europe, Australia, Antarctica, North America,
Africa.
South America.
Africa.
Yeah.
Continente americano, continente europeo, continente asiático, continente africano.
Son seis,
Sí.
seis. Oceanía, América del Norte, Europa, Asia, África y me falta uno.
¿Antártida?
Ah, la
Sí,
Antártida,
o-
sí, sí.
Pero América son...
América
¿Es
está-
un continente o dos?
América está constituido por un continente en realidad.
It's 7 continents. North America, South America, Africa, Asia, Europe, Antarctica. I think Antarctica. I think that's. I don't remember that was
Australia or Oceania?
Australia. Yeah.
5. Es América, Europa, Australia, Asia y se me va una.
África.
África.
7 continents. You have North America, South America, Africa, Europe, Asia, Australia, Antarctica.
So here we can see that English speakers say there are 7 continents with North and South America as distinct continents. In fact, on the map behind me, you will see 7 distinct continents labeled. And the Spanish speakers said there were 5 or 6 continents, with of course America being one continent, just like they explained when asked what is America. So it seems the basis of this problem is, what is a continent? And how can we have such different ideas of what they are when it seems to be something so basic that we probably all learned in elementary school? The truth is, continents aren't real. Or at least they're not objective facts. They are merely cultural, subjective concepts that can and have changed over time. There are many different models of continents, which often range between 3 and 8, but some would say that anywhere between 2 and 11 isn't entirely unreasonable. And what those continents are and what they're called depends on who you ask and can be drastically different. In fact, in some of our oldest mentions of continents from people like Herodotus, they have been questioning these conventions, not understanding why they even exist. For our international viewers, it would be great if you could leave a comment and let us know what model of continents you use so we can get even more comparisons. That being said, the concept of a single continent America wasn't even that uncommon in English or even within the USA until about the mid-20th century. In fact, that's why the USA is named the United States of America and not the United States of North America or something else. Keep in mind, though, that this was often used interchangeably with calling the country by the noun America, something that had been in use by at least some people for centuries earlier, although it only really gained popularity around the time of the Spanish-American War. Calling ourselves as citizens and using the adjective American, however, likely dates back to the earliest days of this country. Originally, the people in the British colonies were referred to as British Americans because they were British citizens living in America. But then, after independence from Britain, they were no longer British, so they simply dropped that part of the name and they were simply called Americans. And today, many languages only have words that are derived from American versus languages like Spanish that have a word like estadounidense to refer to US citizens. The word estadounidense also presents some of its own ambiguities because Mexico is officially also Estados Unidos, and other countries in the past have also used that term for their official name. But do not mistake this as meaning that the continent was always America and it's just the USA randomly trying to be different in the last few decades. After all, the name America was made in Europe by a European named for another European, and that other European never even realized during his lifetime that somebody else had named an entire continent after him. And all of that didn't even happen until a little over 500 years ago. There have been people in this land for thousands of years before that, all with their own names for the continent, or at least for some part of the land that they lived on, and others that might not have even had a concept of continents as we know them today. Indigenous peoples from what is now the northeastern US had a name that translated to Turtle Island to describe the land they lived on, or at least North America. And some people from the south and southwestern US called it Mature Land. Some people from Central and South America called it the Living Land. And we haven't even been able to find any record of what the Incas might have called the land, if they even had a concept of continents to begin with, despite the fact that their language Quechua is still the most spoken indigenous language in all of the Americas, or America. At the end of the day, geography does not have an objective definition for what a continent is, and geology does define the difference between continental versus oceanic crust, but not individual continents. Finding a definition that isn't arbitrary or subjective on some level may even be impossible. Take a look at what people said when we asked them, what is a continent?
A mass of land surrounding the world. I forget the definition, but like, yeah, the mass of land with like, I guess where civilization live at, I guess.
Continente es la formación a través de una sola estructura terrestre compuesta por varios países unidos, divididos por fronteras, por el mismo ser humano, pero el continente sí, desde que empieza la Tierra a través del Polo Norte, Polo Sur o el mar, unidos pero en diferente país.
Like a mass of land, section of land.
Anything else? No, I can't. I wouldn't say anything else.
La estructura de tierra organizada o dividida por secciones de tierra, por así decirlo, lo cual conlleva en conjunto gobierno, poder y todo a armar un país.
It's a combination of countries, a large mass of land.
¿Cómo decirlo? El continente es... Ay, muy buena pregunta.
Está bien, si no sabes, está bien.
Pues la tierra separada por los océanos, no sé.
Something like a large continuous landmass seems to be a common feature among definitions of a continent. But then, does something like Oceania count as a continent? It's just a group of islands. Does that mean Caribbean should also be its own continent? And where do we draw that line between Oceania and Southeast Asian islands? Should those islands just be considered part of Oceania? Do islands get to be considered part of continents at all? Surely nobody would doubt that Japan is definitely part of Asia. But does that mean that Hawaii is part of North America just because it's a US state, even though it's actually really far away from the continental mainland? And what if we said Australia is the continent instead of Oceania? Now, some people call it an island, but it's about 4 times larger than the next largest island, Greenland. And it's over 80% the land area size of Europe. But then again, that's only if you even consider Europe to be a continent. In some places like Russia and Japan, they use a 6-continent model like Latin America does. But unlike Latin America, it's Eurasia that is considered one continent, and North and South America are considered 2 separate continents. And then without Europe and Australia, that would make Antarctica the smallest continent in the world. But then why stop there? If some people consider America to be one continent, why do so many of the same people consider Africa, Europe, and Asia to be 3 different continents? If we argue that America is one continent because it's connected by the Isthmus of Panama, well, Africa and Asia are connected by the Isthmus of Suez, which is over twice as wide. And then Europe and Asia are connected by the Isthmus of, well, it's not even an isthmus. It's just a random peninsula on the landmass, and it's not even the thinnest part of the peninsula that separates Europe from Asia. Traditionally, the Ural Mountains were used, but no other continent is defined by mountainous divisions. And where is that border where there are no mountains? Because the Ural Mountains certainly don't go all the way. No matter how we divide them, it will be arbitrary in some way. Even if we go with a bare bones definition of just a large continuous landmass, making Afro-Eurasia and America each single continents, where do you draw that line between a continent and an island? Is it at the size of Australia, Antarctica, or Greenland? You'd be setting a cutoff based on some random land area amount. Should the cutoff be 10 million square kilometers, 5 million, 20? There's nothing in nature that specifically separates those things. There's nothing that makes a specific size of cutoff more naturally significant than any other size. No matter how we do it, it will be arbitrary. Now, to conclude the last remaining question of the video, what does all this have to do with the movie Arrival? Probably every linguistics student's favorite movie because it's likely the only one that you've seen that actually has a linguist, or at least features an accurate representation of linguistics. Arrival's plot is focused around a very important linguistic theory. If you haven't seen it yet, feel free to pause now and watch the movie so you can enjoy it fully without any spoilers. But if you're ready, let's quickly talk about the Sapir-Whorf Hypothesis. It's the name of a song in the soundtrack and the linguistic theory that motivates the climax. The theory basically says that your native language, or the way you speak, affect your perception of the world. And this theory comes in two major flavors: linguistic determinism and linguistic relativism. Linguistic relativism is what most linguists stick to today, including ourselves. Basically says your native language influences the way you perceive the world. Linguistic determinism has a much more strict opinion, basically kind of saying your native language controls your perception of the world. Because it doesn't really have a lot of wiggle room and doesn't really allow changes to your perception of things, it's not really that popular anymore. In Arrival, this Sapir-Whorf hypothesis is taken to a sci-fi extreme. The Heptapod language has no concept of linear time the way we do, and this is expressed by writing it in a circle. You may not have noticed it, but in the opening scenes of the movie, our linguist Louise is walking through a hospital hallway, and that hallway is circular, bringing that representation throughout the rest of the movie. Now, this lack of linear time is so strong that when Louise finally becomes fluent in the Heptapod language, she interprets time as being non-linear as well, giving her the ability to see all parts of her life at the same time. Again, that is still a sci-fi extreme, but there is some level of this perception of time that does change depending on your native language. If we think back to the language Quechua and related languages like Aymara, we see a different perception of time from the one you and me may be used to. Let me know if you agree with this. I would say that the future is ahead of me and my past is behind me. I perceive time as if I'm walking forward through it and moving forward through time the same way I move forward through physical space. But in Quechua and Aymara, the past is in front of them and the future is what's behind them. Because in their perception, they think of it as if I can see the past because I know what happened. So therefore, it's in front of me. Whereas I don't know what's going to happen in the future and I can't see it, which is why it's behind me. In fact, if you use phrases for a future period of time or day, the translation to Quechua would be back time or back day. The effects of relativism can be seen all around us. Some languages in permanently warm climates might not even have words for snow, whereas the Sami languages in the north of the Nordic countries have hundreds of different words for snow. In fact, the University of Glasgow says that in Scots, the language we covered in our previous video, they have recorded 421 different words for snow. In some languages, there is no right or left, only north, south, east, and west. And so those cultures are always aware of their cardinal directions. In Hawaii, people give directions as Mauka, meaning upland, or Makai, meaning towards the beach, because they live on mountainous islands where it's always obvious where the mountain and where the beach is. Ancient Egypt counted in base 12, so they divided the day into 12 hours, which became the 24 that we know and conceptualize today. If they had used base 10, then maybe they would have divided the day into 10 or 20 hours, which would change so many other aspects of our daily life today, even down to something like the length of an average sitcom episode. Relativism like this affects the way we see the world even when it seems a concept is beyond the subtleties of individual languages, just like continents. But in other examples, Americans and most other foreigners will argue all day as to whether Fahrenheit or Celsius is better for measuring temperature. Because no matter what your perspective is, the one you grew up with and learned about as you acquired your native language is the one that is easier for you to conceptualize. And even learning the other, you might feel like you're always just converting or translating back to your original measurement system. In the end, both of these options are arbitrary, just like continents. Nature does not naturally divide water into 100 units of energy levels, nor does it divide it into 180 neat units for Fahrenheit. Nature also doesn't naturally divide itself into continents, and it doesn't naturally define the cutoff between a continent and an island. If you grew up with a certain concept of this subjective idea of what continents are, it seems ridiculous that other people can think any differently. When we have different concepts of what continents are, that leads some people to believe that there is no continent simply called America, because there's two continents, North America and South America. And therefore, if there's no continent called America, there should be no confusion when we use the word America to refer to a single country, especially when it's the only country that actually has America in its official name. However, if you grew up with the concept of a single continent called America, it seems ridiculous that people would use the word America to refer to just one country when it's obviously so much more than that. No matter which view you have on these topics, you are correct. We can each be correct while contradicting because we speak differently and relativism affects us in different ways. What we want to show with this video is the underlying reason why people disagree and argue. Notice we're not taking sides and saying America always means this and never that and it can never change, because these words mean different things to different people and their meanings are always changing, and that's okay. We believe that these arguments often stem from people simply not understanding that there can be another view of the same concept. And people argue so strongly about stuff like this, defending their point of view, because to them it's obvious that they're correct and therefore the other person must be wrong, when in reality, neither side is wrong, they're just different. When I speak English, I'm American. I have no other word to describe my nationality. I have no other adjective to describe things that come from this country, like American football or American food. When I speak Spanish, my nationality is estadounidense, because I know that Americano means something different. Even though there's obviously ambiguity with a word like estadounidense, because there's not only one country called Estados Unidos, I know how people normally use it, and that's to refer to the USA. Just like in English, people normally use America to refer to the USA. And I have no right to expect people from a different native language to use words and speak the way I do or want them to use certain words. So there's no reason when I'm speaking Spanish, I should expect people to use America the same way I do. If you made it to the end, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed that and would like to see more like it, please consider checking out our other videos. We'd like to do a lot more videos coming soon, hopefully get the next one up in 2 weeks or less. And the best way to help us do that is by supporting us with likes, shares, comments, and subscribing. I'm Carson, this is the Descriptivist Dialect. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.